I am here with Misha Crosby and John Mawson, writer and directors of Unsinkable, an audio movie. Um, this thing was really interesting. I thought I was getting didn't quite read all the things. I thought I was getting a movie screener, and I hit the first episode. I'm like, oh, this is audio. Oh, this is cool. And right away, I noticed the ambition of this because I've heard other kind of similar things, but this is really action heavy. What were kind of some of the challenges in putting this together?
Well, the biggest challenge was we were recording in COVID. That was first. We had 37 actors doing over 100 roles, everyone pretty much in individual studios or recording in their home studios over the course of several months. That was the first big challenge.
Mhm. And then piecing it all back together, what we had, because we recorded all those roles individually, was well, one performance where that was the case. But other than that, no real scenes where, oh, we've got the response coming up here. We had a team in London and worked through, multiple different takes, multiple different performances to put that back into a coherent piece.
And like, so when you write a movie, just in the writing process, when you write a movie, there's dialogue lines and there's action lines, and you can get away with a lot with the look. In this, you don't have that. You have to you have to do a lot of exposition, which normally is the thing in movies that people hate, but in this, it's necessary. So how do you get around that and keeping it as action heavy as you do?
Well, it started out with a movie script. I originally wrote the movie script. People who read it said it would make a great TV series. So I then expanded it up because there's so much story to tell into a limited season TV series. And then when we started thinking about doing it as an audio piece, I had to rewrite every scene for the ear and take it from the eye to the ear and do that without exposition, without someone saying, and then we went to here, or what are you doing now? And that was the challenge, and it took months. But I think as you hear, we achieved it. We have no narration in any of the episodes at all beyond the very opening, statement from Brian Cox. This is a story of an ordinary cargo ship. And so that was the challenge. And as a writer, I had a lot of input from Misha and from our co-producers in London. Jack Bowman and Andrew Mark Sewell and Helen Quigley. And they will sort of come back with notes saying, not quite getting this, or how about saying that? And we refined it and refined it and refined it and turned it into the 11 episodes we now have.
And
Instead of
how do
show
you?
don't oh, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, really, instead of show don't tell, it became hear don't tell, if possible. With really exposition when it's necessary, and of course, you need to say some things out to create a picture. And if you can get the dialogue to come across with that, where it's actually a natural thing for somebody to have said, all the better.
Yeah, you can't just have the character push the button because you'll hear a click and not know what that is. But you also have to get away where I'm going to push the button now. It's like, how do we do that without sounding lame?
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. And we cast very carefully to make sure that we have very individual sounding actors, so
Yeah.
that you knew who you were with. There was never, is this guy, is it this guy, is it that guy? As you listen, you'll realize that we were very careful about that. We also had the most fantastic input from our composer, Stephen Endelman, who made sound, if you like, themes for every ship. All the major characters had their own themes. So quite often you won't even realize it, but you're listening to someone and maybe it's their theme, or it's a version of their theme, or of the ship's theme. And then on top of that, we had the most amazing sound design done by Oscar-winning an Oscar-winning team. I'll let Misha tell you about that.
We worked extensively with Jimmy Boyle's team over in London. Jimmy's probably pretty famous for his work in Band of Brothers, a World War II show on HBO, of course. He had this amazing library of World War II sound effects that we were able to draw from. We also had Ben Wilkins and Sean Higgins. Ben, he did very well with his work on Whiplash. He won an Academy Award for it, in fact. And they then went and put this into Atmos after we'd gone through that initial sound design and mixing process.
Was there any sort of like a test that you did, like maybe like a just like a 3 minute trailer version of this, or did you just
Well,
go all in, just go for it?
Oh, it's funny you mentioned that. When this was first brought to us, and the suggestion was made around COVID, hey guys, you're gonna have to put the brakes on this feature film. You know, you're gonna spend a long time developing, putting the cast together, and all of that. Why don't you do this as an audio movie? John and I had no idea what the hell an audio movie was, you know, and it was something that then, before we took on this endeavor, we wanted to see whether that was going to be viable. And so John and I went away. He punched up about sort of a 5, 6 minute script, right? In which then we said, well, let's just go out to some local actors in LA and and have them record this. We'll put it back together. I'll throw on some sound design, some music, etc., etc. And let's just see if this can flow. Let's see if this can work as an idea. And it's also just as importantly, let's see if this can work with action and big scenes like that. Because sometimes when it's not entirely dialogue driven, you're worried about whether that can play for the ear. And so we did a little test, and it was successful enough for us to think then that we could pull off the whole thing.
I think something like this would work really well for like people with visual impairments. I wonder if this is something you could go forward, like adapting other movies, other action movies specifically that someone that's blind, they wouldn't be able to enjoy fully because it's just explosions and gunshots, but something that's more immersive, such as this.
Well, we've been told this a lot. A lot of people have said this would be great for people with hearing difficulties or completely deaf. And actually, one of the things we've talked about doing is putting this into movie houses. Turning it into a full, instead of episodic, turning it into a full-length film effectively, and having people with hearing difficulties not having to have the earpiece on that does somebody with audio description, but just sit back in the comfortable chairs and listen to let the sound tell the story for them. So it is actually something we're actively thinking about.
Mm-hmm. That you also on IMDb there's a credit for Valerie. I'm gonna mess up that last name. Nikitiuk, I believe, has a visual effects credit.
VFX artist, yeah.
How does that work for this? Because I'm kind of
Well,
confused by that.
in the trailer, which you may or may not have seen, I wanted to make sure that we had some visual representation there as well to show people what this world represented, at least for us in some moments. And so, yeah, there was some VFX work that happened to create that, and it was one of the team that helped with that.
And I mean, just as far as the rest of the crew, I mean, the everyone that works in the sound are the stars of the show here. You must have what was it like getting the crew together? Because you got to get like the top brass in to pull off something that you did with this.
Well, we decided when we started casting, we just decided to aim for the very top. We put our cast wish list together, and we started at the very top. Mm-hmm. And we were lucky enough, in strange ways, we didn't know it at the time. We were lucky enough, of course, that it was COVID. Everyone's sitting at home in lockdown, nothing to do. And stars that would normally be booked solid for years and not really interested in spending a day on an audio piece like the money we could offer had nothing to do and started to come on board. And their agents got behind it. The more they heard about it, even these top agents, they were like, oh, this is interesting. And it's something we could do. I'm sure we're still doing our job. And it was Brian Cox who was the first big name to come on board. And when we talked to him about it in the studio, we said, what attracted you to this? And he was kind enough to say that he loved the script and was fascinated by the story and the role, which was not something that he usually gets to play. But he'd also spent the first 9 years of his career in a radio play, and he loved the medium. And that's why people came on board. And to a man and a woman, they all said the same thing, is that you create the character yourself. You don't have to worry about green screens or costumes or what they're going to do in post. You just create the character and the circumstance and the scene in your mind and go for it.
And so I've seen there's 11 episodes. I've heard 5 of them for this interview. Right. And what goes into the process of and this may be towards the writing stage where you find out the breaks. And is there any plans of doing like a Kill Bill, the whole bloody affair, just having it 3.5 hour long deal without any breaks in it?
Initially, it was thought that we may go ahead and do that and come out like with one long piece, as it were. But we spoke to some partners quite frankly, done a lot more audio than us. And, podcasting has, of course, become more and more popular. And whilst we will never brand this as a podcast, it will certainly be available on podcast formats, right? And for that to be more consumable, we went away. John worked very hard. We had a development team on it as well, with me and Andrew Still from B7 Media and Jack Bowman from Audio Marvels, and wanted to make sure that each of those segments then had their own self-sustained arcs with cliffhangers, as it were, between each one to keep that story going and keep that story gripping.
Yeah. And I usually save this for the end, but we should probably talk about it now. This launches July 10th, but this is not in theaters, I imagine. Like, what's the release schedule of this, and like, how can people find this?
It's going out on Wondery Plus. The first two episodes are going to be coming out together, and they'll be available worldwide. But from the 10th onwards, every week, the following episodes will come out on a weekly basis at Wondery Plus. We're being launched really as the flagship of what they're calling their American History Tellers series. So there will be other ones coming out, other titles coming out. And it'll be with Wondery Plus and on the subscription service for 90 days, and after that, it will be available worldwide again.
And again, this is a really cool experience. Do you guys have any plans in the future for other audio movies?
We'll see. This was a big endeavor.
It's taken us 4 years to get this far.
Well, I guess I should ask, do you want to do another one of these, or is it like too much of a challenge where it's like, nope, one and done? Or
I mean, we've had a history, both of us, in film and television for quite some time, and that takes an immense amount of work to put projects like that together. For anyone considering audio, I would say it's by no means, not an immense amount of work. There's still a lot that it takes to put these productions together, especially if you're taking on directing, and John and I actually voice characters in it as well. Yes, there's less moving around, less location shifts, less makeup, less hair, a lot of other things that have to go into that. But certainly, no, it's a mountain to climb to put these things together. And whether we go on that, it's a big decision to make. But if we do, it'll be with a project that we entirely believe in.
And we've worked together on visual media projects. So in fact, how we met was on a short film that I wrote and made back in the day, and cast Misha. We've worked together on a film called Green Rush that Misha was a producer on, and actor, and I was a co-exec and did a little bit of work on. And we've got other projects that we've put together, and this obviously we would love to see made or get involved in making in the visual sphere as a movie or as a TV series.
What kind of
Oh, I was going to say that was the plan initially. Datura were going to take John's script and develop that into a feature film to release. But when COVID came, of course, we changed tracks with that. And so that initial feature film script, which was initially the San Dimitro, it evolved into what we now see as Unsinkable. Constantly, we were able to keep developing alongside John's TV series version, which was I believe it was a 5 or 6 part episodic initially. Is it still in a 5-part iteration, John?
5-part at the moment, yeah. I mean, I was able to expand the story. There's an extraordinary court case, as you have heard, start to come out. If you've heard the first episodes, which took place just after the event on the ship itself, a couple of months later, which in itself is a fascinating story and part of it. And so the original movie version, I didn't have time to get into that. But of course, once I expanded it up into a longer TV version, then I was able to bring in that court experience, that court case. So, that's why we have the full 3.5 hours. It's a big story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I love courtroom dramas just in general. In fact, one of my favorite movies last year was K-Mutiny Court Martial, and this has kind of a lot of similar DNA. What were some inspirations when making this?
Well, in fact, a lot of it is taken from the transcripts of the court case itself, the actual court case that took place. And in my time, I originally was at sea in the Merchant Navy. I was a deck officer, which is how I knew about this story, and also was able to bring some technical expertise to the story. But after that, I spent a lot of years in the marine insurance and claims world, and I've been in court, with court cases like this in London. So I kind of know the setup and the style and the framing and the way it works. But as I say, a lot of it was down to the actual story and the court law reports themselves. I was lucky enough to get my good friend Hugh Fraser on board as the Justice Langton, and of course he's a fantastic actor and nailed being the judge, as well as the actors who played the lawyers. Nick Hutchison and James. It was like fantastic to be able to create that world, and obviously it's very easy for us, or it was one of the easier jobs we had in terms of moving from place to place, is instantly when you're back in a courtroom. You're not
Right.
going to shoot anymore.
And in addition to that, it gave us a very useful home base, as it were, to keep the story going from a place of, oh, here's where we are and here's what's happening, without the need for constant exposition. If somebody's asking in court, what happened next? Where did we go in the actual drama, without us having to sort of blare out with a narrator, it ended up being a much more elegant way for us to be able to use that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Actually, it was a great way to get through to move the story forward. And you will have heard, for example, I think in episode one, even in episode one, the lawyer saying to the captain, who is actually I play, what was going on the ship, and we have a montage of going around the ship and hearing what the different things are going on in the engine room and in the radio room and in the galley. Well, obviously, visually, that's what I wrote. But how do you do that in the audio sphere? Well, you have to do it the same thing, but to set it up, I had the lawyer ask the question and have the captain describe it in court.
And so you guys have both worked obviously in movies and television. What are some techniques in that translate well to Unsinkable? And then what are some other techniques in visual storytelling that just do not translate at all?
I think good drama is always good drama, right? If you've got the essence and the basis of the truth being played, that's going to translate, I think, not only just across any medium, maybe for a traditional story, but art in general. There are technical things that just weren't going to work, in terms of what can work visually and not. Like, I think we talked a little bit about the exposition side of things and show don't tell. There are some things that just the picture can speak 1,000 words for, and so from that aspect, really, really very different. The setting up the production itself, right? Being able to do this how we did, whilst I'm not going to say that was the most ideal world in the world because of what had happened with COVID, but it was workable, right? To be able to utilize things like Source Connect and have a high fidelity connection down to the other side of the world and still be able to monitor performances. Technically, that still plays, right? We wouldn't necessarily have to travel to, whether it be Prague, where Nathalie was, or Thomas, or the UK, where Thomas and some of the other casts were. And so some of those aspects, I think, totally play, and others don't.
All right. Well, we have a What's in the Box segment. I'll wrap up with this. We have a What's in the Box segment on the show. And each week we have a box of movies and we'll pull one to watch for the following week. And these are movies that are either personal to you or a movie that's like, that's really good and no one talks about it. What's a movie each of you would like to put into the box?
One of my favorite go-to movies, which I think is a perfection, particularly as a seafarer, is Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World. I think it's a really, really great movie. It is shot so beautifully. Every frame is like an oil painting. It's just beautiful. The sound, the music they choose and play, the action scenes, the ships themselves. Yeah, I can just fall into that anytime.
Yeah, it was actually a movie that I watched again recently, and I'm still just astounded at how well Alex Garland put it together. It's Ex Machina. It feels so relevant as ever right now. And then when you think that movie was all put together in 2014, and the themes and the issues it goes through, couldn't seem more relevant than that.
Well, those are great picks, and I look forward to watching both of them again. It's always a good excuse to do so. So Unsinkable coming out July 10th on Wondery Plus.
Yep.
John, Misha, thanks for joining me. And everyone go. I would go watch Unsinkable, but go listen to Unsinkable and sink yourself into it. It's really great, and congratulations on both of you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it.